Looks like things might be getting only worse for Cedar Fair from here. Let's talk about it. It's been 2 years since Top Thrill Dragster had the horrible accident that happened in 2021 when the person involved, Rachel is her name, was hit and permanently hurt by a bracket that came off of Top Thrill Dragster. Obviously, that's been an awful thing, and we've had a lot that we've talked about with that. And obviously, there's been a lot of developments that have happened since then on Top Thrill Dragster just altogether. Cedar Fair has recently announced specifically that they are doing something, even though obviously it's been very obvious to us. We've seen the pylons that have been made, we've seen painting that's been done, we've seen a lot of different things that have been happening on the site itself. Of course, last year they got rid of the majority of the track and are rebuilding it, assumedly anyway, on this on Top Thrill Dragster. There's been a lot of things that have been changing with that ride itself. Obviously, also, there have been tons and tons of rumors to the point of saying that they're getting rid of Top Thrill Dragster, they're getting rid of Corkscrew, they're putting in an RMC T-Rex. If you can dream it, there's been a rumor out on the internets that's told you that there's been something crazy that's happened. I've been on live streams when people have said, is the top hat to Top Thrill Dragster still there? And yes, let me point it to you so that you can see that, because people have spread the most crazy rumors possible about this ride. But obviously there's been a lot of changes that have happened with Top Thrill Dragster, and today we're going to talk about all those different things that have happened. Now, one of those massive changes is that there is a lawsuit that's happening, and I think this is kind of all actually tied together. Everything revolving around Top Thrill Dragster kind of all makes sense when you really put it together. So we're going to talk about it kind of from one spot to the next and discuss what might be happening with Top Thrill Dragster and why. So let's get into it. Anyway, Rachel. Let's get down to Rachel and this lawsuit that happened. Now, I said years ago, right after this happened, I hoped that Cedar Fair was doing something to take care of Rachel. I don't know what actually happened as far as that goes. I don't know if there's been any compensation. I don't know if there's been anything that's helped. I do know only one thing, and that is a statement that they made right after the incident happened. All right, so the statement that I have, I could not find the original of it, but it says from WTVG 13 ABC Action News in Toledo, Ohio. Our team has the health and welfare of our guest who was involved in Sunday's incident at Top Thrill Dragster at the forefront of our minds. We will continue to offer our support to her and her family in this unimaginably difficult time. Now, I don't know what that support looked like, so I have no idea if there was anything, measurable at all whatsoever, anything like that. I do know a little bit about this lawsuit, though, what's come to light and what's been in the official statements. So I did want to talk about that just a little bit. So first of all, I'm glad to hear that Rachel is okay. The family asked for privacy for a long time, so I really haven't even looked up what happened to this woman. I'm very glad to at least hear that she is functioning, that she's alive, things like that. Now, it does say, though, that there's some permanent damage that's happened, and that's what she's suing for right now. She's been permanently injured. She's suing for damages for medical bills of over $2 million, and they imagine that it could potentially go up to $10 million. Also suing for compensation of potential future work. She was also in a graduate program. So all those things come into play with that. And then her husband is also suing for loss of companionship. And I believe that her father, who was there with her on the day of, is suing for emotional damage of being there and seeing that happen. Now, I don't know what all that's going to actually mean for them. Like, I don't know what they're actually going to get. I do know that Cedar Point was cleared of any legal wrongdoing as far as when the Ohio Department of Agriculture came in. They were given the idea that they did not do anything illegal in that. As far as taking care of the ride, checking the ride, doing all that kind of stuff. There was no like legal fault against them on that. And that doesn't mean that Cedar Point can't be at fault for something in this lawsuit. The suit also does allege that Cedar Point wrongfully dismantled some of the ride pieces so that they wouldn't get caught. Now, I don't know exactly what that would mean, what parts that would be. I do know that Cedar Point had things still like completely the same for a very, very long time that year, deep into Hollow Weekends, and that's why they were not able to do Blood on the Bayou, because you couldn't walk through there so that people couldn't tamper with anything. It was an evidence scene for anything that could potentially come to light. So I do know that happened. So that continued for a very long time, but I don't know if they had private people that they wanted to have take a look at each individual piece, or what they were looking for, if they were looking for a private investigation or what. So that may be something that may be a part of this. I'm not entirely sure. Beyond all of that, my thoughts on this whole part of the video today, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. Nobody likes any of this. It's an awful thing that has happened. If Cedar Point hasn't been helping this woman, then God forbid that. They should have been doing something from the very beginning. Now, I understand as far as legal things go, a lot of times any kind of help, ends up you admitting that you just are completely at fault. So I do know as far as legal stuff, that's where the difficulty comes in, because the law kind of messes things up and makes it often that we end up not being good people. I hope that they've been helping her to some degree. If they've been helping her, then, maybe I hope that it's a little bit lessened. If they haven't been helping her at all, then yeah, I hope she's getting what she needs. I hope she gets what she needs through this lawsuit. That is something that it's been an awful thing, and it is something that I think Cedar Point needs to make a point of being able to help this woman as she's going through this horrible, horrible time. And not just this woman, but her family also. Because so many things have been affected by this one incident that happened. Of course, I do hope that Cedar Point and Cedar Fair, especially considering this horrible thing that happened too with Fury 325, I hope that they are doing a little bit more of checking their rides. This has happened twice, and I do know that they have some pretty strong rides that have had some pretty crazy impact because they're very intense rides. Because of that, there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong because they're very intense rides. So I hope that maybe Cedar Fair ups their game as far as their checking of their rides go, things like that. Now, I will also say, especially as far as Fury 325 goes, that is something that the ride is actually designed to end up, compensating for that kind of stuff, because it is a steel beam. If you have something that breaks in one particular spot and only one particular spot, then you can end up with that stress being taken onto other steel parts of that ride. So it is made to compensate for it. It does work in that kind of way. I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see that it can potentially work in that kind of way also, and that people were not hurt as the ride actually was going past those spots, or that one spot where it was entirely broken off of one of the support beams. But that is something that I think Cedar Fair really needs to look at, because if that kind of thing happens, it should be shut down immediately. You shouldn't have someone else who sees it from the parking lot, which is what I've heard is what happened. And that should not be the case. You shouldn't be seeing it from the parking lot and then being like, oh, that ride needs to be shut down. No, someone else who's an inspector should see that kind of thing and shut it down very, very quickly. So again, not like massive emergency, but still something where I feel like maybe the fault of Cedar Fair is coming down on that. If maybe there's not as much stringency in checking each of these rides over and over and over again to make sure that they are completely and 100% safe for everyone to go on to. And I think that kind of pressure from YouTubers, from the media in general, is something that Cedar Fair needs to feel. They need to feel that we want them checking these things very, very strongly. That's one thing I've always liked about Cedar Point, is that Cedar Point really, really checks things thoroughly. If that thoroughness isn't happening quite as much, then they need to feel the pressure that we expect it, and that is part of why we're paying them to come to their park, because we can be safe there. Beyond that, we have Zamperla. Zamperla is from what I can see, a family coaster, and not just coaster, but mostly family ride producer. They do have one ride at Universal Studios Shanghai that is more of like a family type ride, and it is more of a coaster, but it's really almost like a dark ride, but in the light, in the daytime, outside. So it's pretty cool. It's Puss in Boots, but it's, as you watch it, it's like that's what Cedar Fair is going with right now. And it has been announced that Zamperla is going to be the one that takes over Top Thrill Dragster instead of Intamin. So, Top Thrill Dragster being done with this family ride, and this being the very first thing that Zamperla does that is a larger kind of a thing, is kind of a little bit confusing for me, honestly. And I'm a little bit concerned about what the state of Cedar Fair is going to be like, especially if this kind of stuff doesn't go well. Now, I do think this is all connected to the lawsuit and stuff like that. I think they saw this lawsuit coming. I think they knew what was going to be happening, and I think they knew where they needed to kind of sink their money in order to have a little bit of a better place to be able to go with this. They didn't want to have to spend a ton of money on an additional ride, or at least not quite as much money on additional rides, because they've been concerned about this coming lawsuit and what that might mean for them as a company. So, because of that, they chose Zamperla. Zamperla had their freeform coaster, and they did choose to go with the Zamperla spinning mouse coaster. Well, freeform coaster, really, but, you know, they turned it into Wild Mouse. Now, Wild Mouse, has it been a great experience? I'm kind of confused and concerned about this decision, because the Wild Mouse coaster, while it's a fine, solid coaster in and of itself, it's certainly not anything that's fantastic, and it's also certainly not anything that's, groundbreaking for Cedar Point. But on top of that, it's also not something that's really been very consistent or good for Cedar Point, I don't think, at all, because it's been something that's been so broken down. We're like halfway through the season now. I guess not quite halfway, but we are a partial way through the season, and we're still having constant breakdowns on that ride. As a matter of fact, walking past it, I've seen it closed far more often than I've seen it open. And I've been there a lot this season. Go check out the videos if you want to of how many times I've been there this season. There's been a lot. I'll put the playlist up here. But yeah, so because of that, I'm worried about what this ride might actually mean for Cedar Point's future, especially since it's being redone by Zamperla. I think Cedar Point may have cheaped out on this one. I think they may have gone for just whoever had the lowest bid that said, yeah, we can do something for you for this ride. And that really concerns me, because I think, especially considering one of the rides that is one of the biggest rides in all of the world, really. I mean, it is. It's the second biggest in all of the world. They're going to be redoing this with a coaster manufacturer that doesn't really know exactly what they're doing. Now, they are doing LSM launches, and this is their new coaster, like, experience that they have, and there's all kinds of different layouts that they have that are options for this ride, which is great. I'm glad to see that they have different layouts and all of that. I think it's exciting that they could potentially be doing some different stuff, but if it's in any way a flop, it's going to massively impact both Zamperla and Cedar Point. Now, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing because maybe this is the way for Zamperla to prove themselves and to come out of kind of their normal box of what they've been and to end up being this massive coaster designer. That's something that is not impossible, and it's not something that's unprecedented by Cedar Point. So let's talk about Intamin. This is not unprecedented. This is something where Cedar Point has done this before with Intamin itself. Now, Intamin today is known for some massive behemoths, but initially, Intamin was a kids manufacturer, and their very first coaster was Wilderness Run. Today we call it Wilderness Run. At the time they actually called it Gemini, or the Junior Gemini. So that ride is actually the very first thing that Intamin did, and then Intamin went on to make Millennium Force, and then Intamin went on to make Top Thrill Dragster, and then Intamin went on, after a long stretch of time actually, went on to make Hagrid's, and went on to make Velocicoaster. So there's all kinds of stuff that Cedar Point has kind of encouraged with Intamin. Intamin ended up being this massive, massive behemoth of a coaster manufacturer. But that's not without some massive issues also. I have a theory about Cedar Point versus Kings Island. At Kings Island, their operations, like the rides themselves, seem to work very, very well. They're very rarely down, but instead, at Cedar Point, you have rides like Maverick and like Top Thrill Dragster, obviously, but also like Millennium Force, where they go down very, very frequently. And a lot of the common thread for that is Intamin rides. My videos from early 2021 show that it was down all the time. I think I only got to ride it like once or twice that year, and those were for when I did all ride challenges in that year, because I was trying to ride every single thing, and I was able to finally get Top Thrill Dragster. But even then, Top Thrill Dragster was down so often, I often didn't get to ride it. My daughter's over there. Sorry, guys. She's we're seeing her move around. So, but I mean, she's fine. She's fine. So anyway, those rides were very inconsistent, but I think it's because Cedar Point took a fledgling company and created something big out of it, but they reached for the stars. They did some crazy stuff with that. And now we're doing it again, but we're doing it with some other massive rides. Now, when we look at Kings Island, we look at rides that, the B&Ms that have been around for quite a while, and they don't push the limits to the extreme that Cedar Point did. Yeah, sure, they have a 300-foot coaster, but they were the fourth one to make that 300-foot coaster in North America. So because of that, you don't have nearly as many of these massive, boundary pushing rides at Kings Island. They have a great solid lineup of rides, but the rides aren't quite so crazy, and they're not quite so early as they are at Cedar Point, where Cedar Point has been all about pushing the limits, pushing the limits, pushing the limits, pushing the limits. So I can see them, trying to do something exciting with this new ride, but it also worries me about how well it's actually going to work because of the track record of what Cedar Point has done with Intamin, and the way it kind of seems like they're repeating history now with Zamperla also. So I am very concerned about what this might actually mean for Cedar Point. I'm concerned about what the overall experience might end up being, and of course I'm concerned about things maintaining the quality that they have. Of course, Cedar Point could just kind of reach out to Zamperla after this for all kinds of flat rides, and they have a plethora of different kinds of rides that they could actually have that could be a little bit more exciting than Cedar Point's normal flat ride lineup that they've had recently. But then that also confuses me because Cedar Point has clearly made a push toward being more kid friendly, and then they've taken all of those things out that they were doing, that stuff that has made me and my daughter very upset at Cedar Point, like not having the Forbidden Frontier and all those kinds of things.
Okay, that made me super angry.
Yeah, there she is. I got her. But it is a very exciting thing that they could potentially do something new with this company. I guess I'm a little bit back and forth. I'm worried. I'm not going to lie. I'm definitely worried about what Cedar Point might be like. And I try not to sensationalize things or anything like that. But this is a move that the more I've looked at it, the more I've seen that worries me about it. It's definitely something that I feel like they've cut corners on. And they're trying to, save so that when this lawsuit comes through, which I'm sure they were expecting, they have money for that. Of course, they just came out of the pandemic, and then this. So they're trying to make sure that they have enough money and that there's not massive issues for the company in the future. But I am concerned about a potential low-quality manufacturer creating a potential low-quality, not-so-great experience for Cedar Point also. That's a little bit of concern. Now, if they want to take Zamperla and they want to do some dark rides and they want to do some exciting things like that, or even like open air dark rides, I'd be so into that. If they want to do a Puss in Boots type of a ride for Charlie Brown or something like that, I would take that in spades. Absolutely. But that doesn't seem to be the way that Cedar Point is headed. Because they've taken out these kids' things. They've taken out the different exciting, experiences that they had specifically for kids, where it looked like they were really moving in the direction of a family park, having more entertainment and all that kind of stuff. They've gotten rid of a lot of that recently. So it worries me, and it makes me wonder, what direction are they actually headed in? Are they just headed in a, cheap thrills kind of a direction? Because that's what it kind of seems like they might be doing. But anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys down there. And also, I make new theme park related content every couple days. I'd love for you guys to press that subscribe button. If you've made it to this part, you definitely need to. I'll be talking a lot of news about Top Thrill Dragster, but also I'm in the parks constantly, all the time, and I love to make videos about what's happening at Cedar Point, Kings Island, and the North Coast here. So anyway, though, let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Press that subscribe button, that like button, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to see you guys in the comments down there. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and let's go! Hey, thanks for watching. I release theme park related videos at least a couple times a week, so press that subscribe button if you made it this far. Also, check out similar videos in the playlist to the right, or find my newest video to the left. Thanks again, and let's go!